Welcome to today's podcast. I'm Jim Purcell, co-founder of the Returns on Wellbeing Institute. It's 2020 and American employers now spend almost $9 billion a year on employee well-being programs to help their employees become healthier, happier, and more engaged. In fact, more employers are moving away from traditional fitness-focused wellness programs and instead are taking a more whole-person approach to employee health. And that includes mental, financial, and social well-being. Here to discuss this today are David Osborne, the CEO of Virgin Pulse, and Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Chief Medical Officer of Virgin Pulse and the President of the Virgin Pulse Institute. Virgin Pulse has a presence in 190 countries. It serves 4,000 organizations, and it has 7.5 million users. David and Rajiv will share their insights on the challenges and opportunities in 2020 for employee well-being, drawn from running the largest digital health, well-being, and engagement company in the world. Welcome, David and Rajiv.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
Most of our listeners know several studies, and particularly the recent Baker-Song JAMA published study, conclude that they don't work, that they produce no ROI. So ROI remains both controversial and key. It's hotly disputed. And yet CEOs and CFOs are all asking, what should I be spending? And is it worth it? David and Rajiv, what have you been hearing about this over the last year?
Do you want me to start?
Sure.
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think first and foremost, Jim, you have to define what ROI means or what it is. We view it there's soft ROI and hard ROI. So soft ROI would be more like, are we reducing absenteeism at work? Are we reducing attrition levels for members at work? Are employees more engaged at work? Are they more promotable? We have one of the lowest employee engagement rates in the country right now, with the highest or one of the lowest unemployment rates as well. In fact, the unemployment rate in the country's at a 50-year low. So you've got a bit of a tsunami of an issue. So I think defining what ROI really means. For us, it's all those things, plus it's also a reduction in medical costs. What we're seeing in some of these programs that you've cited is the quality of the programs are quite poor, first and foremost. Secondly, they're very narrowly focused. And the length of time that they're implementing a program to see if is it really working or not is just not even remotely close to impactful. So when you digest those 3 or 4 areas, you'll find that the actual programs and the studies that they're showing are just really not hitting the mark at all. I know you've seen a lot of these as well, Rajiv.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the other piece is, there's an engagement component to this. And when you look at a lot of the studies that have been done, as Dave mentioned, the quality of the programs are poor. They're not very comprehensive, but they also have very low utilization and low sustained engagement. And so, of course, they don't work. If nobody's using them and they don't stick with the program, you're not going to get the population level impact that you want to see. So we frankly don't pay a lot of attention to some of these academic studies that were designed in a lab that don't actually come anywhere close to approximating what a real comprehensive modern well-being kind of strategy and intervention look like inside a large employer. And frankly, what I would say is I know there's a lot of talk in the press about it, but I would say we have 4,000 companies that use our product. None of them are paying attention to those studies. They've bought into well-being, and they're seeing value on a lot of the metrics that Dave talked about. So they continue to invest in that program. We've had customers with us for a decade or more, and they continue to invest in it because they are seeing, in their view, they're seeing a return on investment. So going back to what Dave said, we've got to redefine what return on investment means. And I think employers take a very holistic view into ROI, and I think some of the academics are taking a very narrow view on it.
Now, Rajiv, your Virgin Pulse Institute is the analytical arm of Virgin Pulse. How do you suggest that companies measure a relationship between their well-being activities and any ROI, whatever it is?
Leading indicators, right?
That's right. Yeah, I think they need to separate leading indicators and lagging indicators. Healthcare cost reduction, profitability as a company, sales performance, those are going to be lagging indicators that are going to take you several years to achieve. But there are leading indicators that we can start to measure almost immediately. Activation, engagement, behavior change. These are things that we see. When we look at our data set of millions of people, we see that they're sleeping more, they're eating fewer calories, They're more physically active. So we see a 15% reduction in daily caloric intake. We see a 30% increase in daily physical activity. We see people reporting that they have more energy at work, that they look forward to coming to work, that they have more collaboration in the workplace. They feel like their employer cares more about them. Their self-perceived productivity goes up. So these are all things that we see as kind of early leading indicators. And then there's sort of in the middle. What are the things that we can start to measure before we see healthcare cost reduction? And we see that. We had a client look at an analysis that we did, and we saw that participants in the program were twice as likely to get promoted if they were actively engaged in the program.
Rajiv hit the nail on the head. And I think if you really want to test out true ROI, you need to wait. You need a year or two to show that we have medical cost reduction and pharmaceutical cost reduction, and we're seeing employee engagement scores go up. That just doesn't happen, like to Rajiv's point, in a lab over the course of 3 or 4 months.
Let me challenge a little bit on healthcare coverage costs. My background. I was a CEO of a health insurer, and I take the position that it's virtually impossible to measure a direct causal relationship between wellness activities and any change in healthcare coverage costs. There are too many variables. I'm not suggesting you can't reduce them, but I'm just saying that shouldn't be your measure. What do you think of that?
I think that's fair, and I would say that our clients are not focused on that. They really aren't. That's not a metric that they're looking at when they make a decision to invest in well-being. They're saying, is this the right thing to do for my employees? Is this going to differentiate me from my competition? Is this going to improve our culture? Is this going to make people more effective at work?
CFO and the CEO are going to say, where's the money? What money are we saving here? And I would suggest that, turnover and engagement are probably the two biggest money issues. Would you agree? And if not, what would you suggest?
There's no doubt. I think if you think about, again, this is an employee market, and hiring great people and using well-being as a recruiting tool, I think, is critical. But keeping people as well is equally as important. So when you see that a good well-being program, and there are good ones out there, are able to reduce attrition in a market like this, that is, to me, that is hard ROI. We think we all know it's underpinned by healthier people have less medical costs. I think we all know that this is underpinned by that. But I think creating a culture of well-being in organizations and showing employees that employers care about them.
Here's my problem. Employers, for many reasons, still resist taking a comprehensive whole-person approach. For example, according to Gallup, employee stress is at the highest level in over a decade, and yet CDC tells us only 20% of programs address stress. Financial well-being remains stubbornly low for lower-paid employees and their families. Engagement, Gallup tells us, is at all-time high at 35%, and yet that means 1 in 3 workers are engaged. There seems to be a disconnect here. What do you see that might explain this?
Well, Jim, I think we're living in challenging times. I think there's this belief that our economy is doing incredibly well. The stock market's at all-time highs. But if you look under the surface, people wage growth has been slow, and wages have not kept up with inflation. Healthcare costs continue to rise. Costs of things health education is at an all-time high. So I think people are struggling financially, and it's creating a lot of stress. So they're living paycheck to paycheck. They have multiple jobs, and I think stress is at an all-time high. I think technology plays a role. I think we're all feeling very overwhelmed. We're very distracted, and I think employers are asking employees to do more than ever before, and to do more with less. And so I think there's a lot of reasons why employees are stressed and why their financial well-being is poor. That being said, I think employers are shifting their approach. I mean, what we hear from our customers and from the market at large is they're very much concerned about the financial well-being of their employees. They want to help them to get out of debt, to save for college, to save for retirement. Emotional and mental well-being is probably the hottest topic that we hear about from employers. They're trying to address the social determinants of health. They're trying to get at some of the root causes of these issues. And I think it's a big sea change that's happening right now.
Yeah, I think I'll add to that real quick, Jim, is you're right. I mean, the most well-being solutions are just that. They're a point solution that address one or two things. And I think You need to get to a place where your well-being, an employer needs to pick a well-being solution that addresses everything. It's not just activity. It's financial wellness. It's mental resilience. It's sleep. It's nutrition. It's navigating the complexity of the healthcare industry. I read a stat the other day that employees that make $100,000 a year, 1/3 of them are living paycheck to paycheck. So, that means that they can't afford a surprise medical bill, for example, right? So, we think about that just in itself. And what we're finding is that employees are actually saying, I'm not going to go to the doctor. I'm going to stay away because I don't want to. I'll be fine. And that just drives healthcare costs up, as you can imagine, and they're not taking care of themselves. So, you're right. We need employers to think more holistically about well-being and choose a platform that addresses all the scenarios and meets employees where they are. What's important to you today might be nutrition and sleep. What's important to me might be activity and financial wellness. We're very different people. So having a personalized experience is critical.
Okay. Approaching financial well-being that you just talked about, there are a number of companies that have people come in and talk to them about contributing more to their 401ks or budgeting better, but there are some employees, maybe not at your shop, but at other shops that simply don't have the money to budget better or put in their 401k. Do you have any advice for innovative things that companies can do to help people with their expenses? Childcare comes to mind. There may be others. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is a growing area of innovation. You mentioned childcare. There are companies that are providing subsidized backup childcare for employees. So an employer can offer this as a service to their employees, and it keeps them at work. If there's a snow day and your kids aren't at school, you don't have to therefore skip work that day. You can actually get backup childcare, and you can get to the office, or if your child is sick. There are tools to support caregivers. What we know is there's a caregiving crisis in America. As the baby boomer generation ages, and Gen X employees are having to take care of their parents, it's taking them out of work. It's creating stress. It's creating financial burden. And so there are actually a whole host of companies now that are supporting employees as caregivers and providing them with tools and resources to make that easier. And employers are paying for those services. So I think we're getting very holistic, and I think it's a very exciting trend that we're seeing in this space.
Yeah, if I'm hearing anything from both of you, it is that employers really are starting to focus much more on whole person, mental and emotional well-being, and financial well-being. That's what you're seeing.
Absolutely.
That's good. Part of any comprehensive approach also should consider workplace culture. And it seems, based on my observations, that too many employers want to jump right into programs, but that's often premature. Virtually all commentators agree that a supportive culture of well-being is key to having programs at work and business success, and the programs won't work in an unsupportive culture. In your experience, are employers focused the way they should be on culture?
Well, we're seeing a shift here as well. We used to call it Wellbeing 1.0, where an employer would say, "Hey, do your health assessment. We'll give you $500." Right? And what we're seeing now is employers are shifting to being very methodical and intentional about well-being culture and creating a culture of well-being in their organization. They're being more authentic and meaningful around it. We're seeing that the well-being space today is less top down. It's less one size fits all, and it's very much bottoms up or employee led. So employers are starting to listen to employees and say, what is important to you? I mentioned earlier, it's not one size fits all for every employee. Some employees are super healthy. So it's more preventative in nature, right? That's what that well-being program is going to be for them. Others are not. It might be let's intervene and try and offer up content or programs that's going to help them. And then others are they might have a chronic condition. So it's really more about reversal. So being cognizant of everybody in your organization is very different. And having a personalized approach is critical. I think the other thing that contributes to culture is really it has to be led from the top. As a CEO, I mean, I participate in our challenges on our platform. I start my own challenges. We have created a culture here of health and well-being. Everybody has a standing desk. We have a walking track. We have healthy foods everywhere. So doing things like that to promote health and well-being versus bringing donuts in every Friday morning, it's a very different mentality. So I think culture is, yes, think about a more holistic approach that's very personalized, but also be methodical with health and well-being, and lead from the top as well.
Yeah, all three of us here today have been CEOs at one point or another, and at times our attention spans are challenged. But how do you persuade CEOs that they should lead this personally, persistently, passionately? Do you have talks with them, and what do you tell them?
Yeah, I tell them just that. If you want to create a culture of well-being, if you want to lower attrition, if you want to have higher employee engagement, if you want to recruit and retain employees, this is one area that's quite easy to do, even as a starting point. So embrace it, be methodical around it. Take the time. It does not take much time, candidly, to jump on an app and create a challenge and invite people to whether it doesn't have to be an activity challenge. It could be a sustainability challenge. That's going to drive culture. It could be who can sleep the most this week, who can drink the most water. It could be anything. So have some fun with it. It's the intrinsic motivation and the social component, the gamification is equally as important as anything extrinsically.
Yeah, and I would add that,
you mentioned something about fun, and CEOs sometimes don't think of their jobs as fun, but the more they get involved with this, I'll bet the more fun they have in their jobs.
There's no doubt. And I think what's interesting is you see a shift in just behaviors around the organization when they see a CEO involved or CMO or anybody on an executive level actually participate in a program like this or participate in a challenge. It's amazing that just people, they get excited about it, and rightfully so. And I get excited about it too. I've yet to win a weekend rumble or a challenge, an activity challenge, but my goal this year is to win one, and I'm going to make sure I do
it. David, you often speak about a new workplace compact between employers and employees, one that establishes trust and mutual respect. That sounds a bit like culture to me. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think if I think about the new social contract, we've touched upon this a little bit. It's really about creating a culture of health. It's really about sharing with your employees that they are important to you on all aspects of the gamut. It's the employees don't just want a paycheck anymore. They want to know that employees are taking care of them. They want to know that they're important to them. They just want to be part of the organization. They want to have a say in what's going on. And I personally feel that health and well-being, again, it is an easy way to create a great culture. It's an easy way to connect with your employees. Often, specifically in this industry that we're in, employees and organizations, and we've done a lot of M&A, employees and organizations that we run into, they're really about the vision or the purpose or the mission. They're less about growth and profitability and EBITDA and all those things that CEOs, as you can imagine, need to be involved in. So trying to change that culture to say, it's okay to grow the organization organically. It's okay to be profitable at the same time, still have fun in the organization, and you can still maintain your purpose and your vision and your mission. Those are some of the things that we work really hard on here to make sure that whatever you're interested in, whether it's developing product, or if you're in a sales org selling, or if you're in client success supporting clients, or if you're an executive just marching to your strategic plan, grab hold of something that's exciting to you. And often in this space, it's really around changing lives for good and doing good in the world, which is exciting. And we've built a great culture around that.
And I understand the importance of touting it being the right thing to do, the socially responsible thing to do, the ethical thing to do, and it is. But when I think of ROIs for organizations, there are really two: greater profitability and mission success. And then there are ways to achieve it, like lower turnover, greater engagement, better customer service, better quality. There are studies, aren't there, out there that show that with elevated employee well-being, there comes greater profitability in for-profits?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's a handful of studies out there showing that companies are more profitable, they're more productive, and their stock prices, outperform their peers in the S&P 500. We actually did our own study on 29 publicly traded Virgin Pulse customers, and what we showed was that over a period of 3 years, the productivity skyrocketed for the companies that invested in employee well-being and made it a central part of their strategy. So I think we've done our own internal studies. There's plenty of third-party studies out there that connect the dots between employee well-being, high utilization of the well-being program, and profitability and productivity of the company.
And of course, that's highly persuasive.
I think it is.
For our last topic, let's talk about Virgin Pulse. The Virgin Pulse technology platform is used by more people than any other in the world. It has 9 different drive areas, it's scalable, and can be personalized. How does your platform differ from others?
Well, I think for a variety of reasons. Number one, the usage is oxygen to us. As we've discussed, health and well-being is a daily engagement. It's not something that you do quarterly or yearly. I use the golf example numerous times. If you played golf once a year, you'd never get any better. If you played golf once a quarter, you'd never get any better. But if you play golf every day, naturally you'll get better. Health and well-being is very similar. So our platform is built on the basis of driving people back to it on a daily basis because it's personalized, because we use AI and machine learning to offer up specific content and programs that is personalized for you. Because we're global and we're the only global company out there. And if you think about the Rajiv's team and all the ROI and the analytics that drive what we're trying to do. We collect 12.5 billion data points a month, and that allows us to be very prescriptive in how we offer up content and so forth. So, and then finally, we're a company that we believe in investing in innovation. We spend north of $20 million a year on innovation to continue to push the platform to its limits. I think if you think about what our vision is, we're creating what we call home base for health, which is, one place to go for employees and employers and payers to really just think about how do you solve all the problems of the health and well-being space? How do you navigate the complexity of this industry? This is, as you can imagine, a relatively broken industry, and I don't think we can fix it, but we can certainly attempt to innovate around it. One could argue that the taxi cab industry is broken, and companies like Uber and Lyft didn't fix it. They innovated around it, and we're doing the same thing. So we're in a good place right now, and we're pretty excited. And some of the things that we've done from a organic build, combined with acquisitions that we've made, and combined with partnering with great companies, has enabled us to be the leader in this space, and we're pretty excited about what we're doing.
Now, I assume you just can't parachute your program in and it works wonderfully. There has to be some preparation. There have to be some other things that have to be done before employees start to use the program, and so that you have high levels of participation. What do you advise employers to do to prepare for your program?
Yeah, I'll let Rajiv comment on our best practices, but to that point, I'll give you the preamble for Rajiv. Program design is important, and setting up an organization with what we call our best practices is important. And we're very prescriptive. If you follow all 10 of our best practices, we can pretty much guarantee your enrollment and your usage and the outcomes that you're going to see. So
Yeah, I mean, we come in and we take a very consultative approach, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all. You don't just flip the switch and off you go. This is something that has to be very strategic and very thoughtful in its implementation. And so we bring a team of experts into each of our customers, and we work on marketing communications. We work on program design. We work on content. We work on reward strategy. How are you going to build this into your health benefits? How are you going to leverage behavioral economics? We work on how do you get senior leadership support. We work on how do you build this, into the on-site, arena. So again, none of it's going to be surprising to you, but we actually take the time to work on all of these things and have a conversation about all of them. And then we tailor it specifically to the company, right? So there's 150 different ways we can configure the program, and we go through each one of those, elements, and we say, what's the right, configuration for this particular company?
What does success look like for that company? And we would start there.
and you start them down the path toward creating a culture of well-being, right?
Correct.
Well, that's good. Very good. And that concludes our review of the challenges and opportunities of the workplace well-being in 2020. David and Rajiv, thank you so much for sharing your insights. I appreciate it. All right. And for our listeners, if you want more information on well-being practices, please visit our website at returnsonwellbeing.com or subscribe to our Returns on Wellbeing Institute YouTube channel. Thank you very much for joining us.